Have you ever been in a place where all you could do was look up and whisper, "God, I can't go on anymore"? A place where words have no power, tears can't heal the pain, and your heart feels like it's about to collapse? A dark room, no laughter, no comfort. Just you, your lonely heartbeat, and a small prayer echoing in the silence. That's not a defeat. That's an invitation. An invitation to step into the deepest place a human being can reach, where there is no self-sufficiency, no control, no place to lean on except God. When you're left with Him, you begin to discover a truth the world cannot teach, that you're not truly strong until you're weak, that you're not truly free until you let go of everything you thought you had to hold on to, that the most enduring love is not that of man, but that of the Creator. If you are in that moment, in that emptiness, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a journey that few have the courage to walk, but those who do will never be the same. Stay. Don't run from the pain. Don't rush to soothe the silence. There is a treasure hidden in these moments. And if you are patient enough to stay, you will find what the world is longing for, but will never grasp: true life. Because when you have only God left, you have everything. Here's a truth few want to face. Sometimes loneliness isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of divine choice. When you enter a season of loneliness, when people you once trusted leave, when relationships that were once your rock, when laughter gives way to silence, understand that it's not necessarily because you did something wrong. Sometimes, it's because you've been chosen for a journey that not everyone is willing to take. Divine loneliness is not the same as the loneliness of failure or being forgotten. It's not abandonment. It's preparation. It's where God takes you away from the crowd to whisper things the crowd will never hear. It's in the quietest moments, when all the noise is quiet, that you can hear the call from deep within your soul, the call that He planted before you were born. Look at Abraham. He left his family, his country, everything familiar, relying on a promise he could not even see with his own eyes. Think of Joseph, sold by his brothers like a piece of merchandise, forgotten in a dungeon, with no one on his side. Both spent long years in loneliness, in the silence of unfulfilled promises. But in that darkness, something miraculous happened. Their faith was not extinguished, but refined like gold in the fire. You may feel like you are being left out. You may wonder why people do not understand you, why you are walking this path alone. But remember, this loneliness is not accidental. It is carefully designed by the hand of the Creator. He is taking you away from dependence on what is easy and comfortable, so that you can rely completely on Him. Spiritual loneliness is also an abandonment. The things that once comforted you, the people who made you feel safe, sometimes have to leave so you can learn to rely on one source: God. This is not punishment. This is liberation. He is peeling away the layers that have made you weak without you even realizing it. He is teaching you that true strength comes not from people, but from an undying trust in the one who never changes. The amazing thing is, when you get through this season of loneliness, you will not be the same person. You will become someone the world cannot shake. Someone who no longer trembles at rejection, no longer shakes at need, no longer crumbles at cold stares. Because you have learned the greatest lesson of all, that you are loved, chosen, and protected, even when no one else stands by you. If you are feeling pushed aside right now, know that God never pushed you away to abandon you. He pulls you aside to meet you alone, to tell you things you would never hear in a crowd, to prepare you for responsibilities others cannot handle. Do not fear loneliness. Welcome it as a stern but loving teacher. Let it teach you freedom from dependence on men. Let it teach you to find your worth and identity in God, not in the eyes or mouths of the world. You are chosen. You are not abandoned. The loneliness you are experiencing today is the bridge that leads you to the great destiny God has prepared for you. There is a truth that all who are used by God must experience. Before you can be brought into the light, you must be trained in the darkness. Before you can bring light to others, you must learn to burn quietly in silence. There is no shortcut to spiritual maturity. No glory comes without the test of fire. Look at the great men of biblical history and you will see a common denominator: silence, isolation, and prolonged training in places where no one sees or praises them. Moses spent 40 years in the desert of Midian, so long that it seemed that all his dreams and ambitions had faded. He was no longer the mighty prince of Egypt, no longer the man with the passion to save his people. He was just himself, an anonymous shepherd in the desert. But it was there, in oblivion, in the quiet days that passed without a trace, that Moses was forged into a man who could hear and obey God's call without confusing the call of the ego with the divine call. David, who was anointed king at a very young age, did not immediately ascend to the throne. Instead, he had to spend long years running from Saul, living in caves, suffering hunger and thirst, being betrayed by those he trusted. In the darkness of those caves, David learned not only to lead by courage, but also to lead by absolute submission to God. He did not seize the throne by his own strength, but waited for God to clear the way. The lessons of humility, patience, and steadfast faith cannot be learned in a palace, but can only be inculcated in the years of wandering. Even Jesus, the Son of God, before beginning his public ministry, spent 40 days and nights in the desert. Alone, hungry, tested, no crowds around, no miracles to witness. Just the naked confrontation with temptation, with weakness, with loneliness. And in that silence, he triumphed, not by his own strength, but by his absolute adherence to the Word of God, which tells us an important truth. Silence does not mean God is far from you. The fire of testing does not mean you have lost your way. The years of neglect, the long, fruitless days, the moments when you wonder what you are doing here, they are all part of the process. There are things that cannot be learned from books. There are qualities that cannot be developed through teaching alone. They can only be forged in endurance, in waiting, in faithfulness even when no one is watching. Fire does not just consume. Fire purifies. It burns away the impurities, the selfish ambitions, the illusions of one's own power. It leaves pure gold, a heart that is no longer shaken by praise or blame, a soul that can stand firm in the storm and still keep the flame of faith burning brightly. You may be in your own desert season. You may feel forgotten, left behind while others advance. But remember, quick success is not always a blessing. Forging in the dark is a precious gift. That is where God is building you, teaching you what the spotlight can never teach. Do not take the desert season lightly. Do not despise the quiet days. In that silence, you are being prepared for what you cannot yet imagine. God is in no hurry. He is patient because he is building you not just a career, but a character, a soul that can endure, that can love, that can fight not by its own strength, but by the power from above. If today you find yourself walking in the dark, do not be afraid. You are not lost. You are being led. You are being prepared. And when the time comes, when he allows the light to shine upon you, you will stand firm, unmoved by success, unblinded by the glare, because you have been forged in silence, in the fire of trial, and you know that your strength does not come from yourself, but from him who called you out of the darkness. There are moments in life when prayer no longer flows. There are no more pretty words, no more songs of praise. There are only sobs, ragged breaths, and unspoken whispers. Those are times when you pray not because you think you should, but because if you don't pray, you will collapse. There is a kind of prayer that comes only when you have hit rock bottom. When you have nowhere to run, no one to hold on to, no plans to cling to. It is a prayer made from the dust, from the ashes, from the ruins of shattered dreams. It is not flowery words. It is the cry of a naked soul before its creator. And it is those prayers, unadorned, unvarnished, that move the heart of God. Remember Hannah, the barren woman, who wept so hard in the temple that no one could understand what she said. People thought she was drunk, but God understood. God heard her painful whispers and answered her by giving her a son, Samuel, the great prophet of Israel. Remember David, when he wept in his psalms, he did not hide his fear, his anger, his weakness. He did not try to beautify his prayers. He brought all the chaos of his heart to God. And it was that honesty that made God call him a man after my own heart. Broken prayers are not rejected by God. On the contrary, he embraces them with boundless love. Because it is when you are exhausted of strength, exhausted of pride, exhausted of the ability to save yourself, that you open up space for God's grace to flow in. Grace does not come when you are good enough. Grace comes when you are honest enough to admit that you cannot make it on your own. Grace is not a reward for perfection. It is redemption for brokenness. And it is where you break that grace begins to flow. God is not looking for perfect prayers. He is looking for broken, humble hearts, knowing that they have no other way out but Him. When you stand in the ashes, when you lift up your empty hands and whisper, "God, if you don't come, I can't go on," heaven bends to listen. That is when God's power is revealed not in a thunderclap, but in the gentle lift of grace. That is when you feel an invisible hand holding you up when your knees buckle. That is when, in your utter exhaustion, you find a strength that is not your own. You may think that when you are at your weakest, you are at your most useless. But in fact, it is when you are at your weakest that you are closest to grace. For God has said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. So don't be ashamed of broken prayers. Don't be embarrassed by broken cries for help. Don't hide your tears when you have nothing left to offer. Know that God does not shy away from such souls. He reaches out, bends down, takes the broken pieces, and begins the process of rebirth. Maybe you are in that place right now, where all you have is a faint whisper, "Lord, save me." If so, you are closer to His heart than you have ever been. And in that moment, you will feel something amazing. Grace is not enough. Grace overflows. Grace will carry you through every storm. Grace will take you farther than you ever dared to dream. There are seasons in your life when you pray and it is silent. You search and there is no answer. You cry out in the night and the only answer is your own echo. You ask yourself, "God, do you hear me? Do you see my tears?" And when the silence lasts, you begin to doubt. Has He forgotten me? Has He turned away? But God's silence is not an absence. It is part of how He works. A way to exercise faith, a way to refine trust, a way to teach you that true love is not based on emotion, but on loyalty. Remember the people of Israel. They cried out for centuries in Egypt, waiting for a deliverer. And for all that time, God seemed silent. But He was not absent. He was preparing a man, Moses, orchestrating events, unfolding a plan of redemption greater than anything they could have imagined. God does not forget. He is working in silence. Remember Job, the righteous man, who lost his fortune, lost his children, lost his health, and was left sitting in the ashes, waiting for a response from heaven. His friends thought God's silence was proof of his sin. But that silence was not condemnation. It was testing. And finally, God spoke, lifted Job, and restored everything to him double. The silence was not punishment. It was an invitation to a deeper level of faith. A faith not based on visible evidence, but on absolute trust in the unchanging character of God. We live in a world of speed, where waiting is considered failure. But in the kingdom of God, waiting is one of the most holy things. It is when our hearts are stretched, expanded, refined, in preparation for the greatness that He is about to give us. Imagine a farmer sowing seeds. After the seed is planted in the ground, there is a long period of time when nothing happens. The ground is bare, the wind blows, the rain falls, and to the naked eye, it would seem that nothing is happening. But beneath the ground, life is quietly taking shape. Roots are going down. Buds are preparing to burst forth. That silence is not a sign of death, but a sign of life about to be born. Likewise, in the silence of God, something is happening deep inside you. Roots of faith are going down. Seeds of hope are sprouting. You are being prepared for a harvest greater than you could ever ask for. Waiting is not easy. It requires you to trust when there is no evidence, to walk when you can't see the path, to press on when you can't feel the emotion. But it is in those lonely steps that an unshakable faith is being formed. And remember, His silence will not last forever. At some point, when the time is right, when you are ready, He will speak. And that word will change your entire life. It will not be a whisper, but a thunderclap, opening the way for miracles you once only dreamed of. So don't be afraid of the silence. Don't rush to fill it with the noise of the world. Enter into it. Live fully in it. Let it teach you that even when you can't hear it, God's love is still enveloping you like a silent, unceasing underground stream. That silence is sacred. And when you learn to trust in silence, you will be ready to hear His voice in the gentle breeze, in the whispers of the soul, in the smallest things that carry eternity. There will come a time when the desert can no longer hold you back. There will come a time when the gray sky will give way to bright light. There will come a time when the tired feet that once trudged in silence will stand up straight, stronger, and more steady than ever. For in the desert, you have learned lessons that no other place can teach. You have learned to live without applause. You have learned to stand without support. You have learned to keep going even when there is no way forward. And above all, you have learned that it is in your brokenness that grace becomes your greatest strength. You are no longer the same person you were when you entered the desert. You have been refined. You have been honed. You have been built from the inside out. What was once weak in you has become a foundation for strength. What was broken in you has become sacred scars that tell the story of redemption. You will come out of the wilderness not just with a story to tell, but with a new power, an authority that the world cannot give and cannot take away. You will not just survive. You will live with a purpose, a fire in your heart, and an unshakable faith. Think of Joseph, who was once sold into slavery, once imprisoned, once forgotten. But one day, after years of suffering and darkness, God made him the second in command in all of Egypt. Joseph not only survived his wilderness, he came out with a mission to save many. Think of David, who hid in caves, hunted like a beast. But when the time came, he was not only anointed king, but became the greatest king of Israel, the one whose descendants would lead to the Messiah himself. The wilderness does not kill those who trust in God. The wilderness kills only those who cannot walk with you into the next season. It removes pride. It burns away fear. It shatters doubt. It washes away fleeting desires. And then, from the ashes, a new person is born. A person no longer bound by temporary things, but shaped by eternal values. When you step out of the wilderness, you do not step out alone. You step out with God before you, God behind you, God all around you. You step out with lessons engraved in your soul, lessons that will never fade, even when the next storm comes. And when others see you, they will not just see what you have been through. They will see the halo of grace surrounding you. They will feel the weight of steadfastness in your every step. And when they ask, "How did you stand through all this?" you will not answer with theories. You will answer with your life. Because I have walked through the desert. Because I have fallen and been lifted up. Because I no longer walk on my own, but the Lord is my strength. This is not the end. This is the beginning. A beginning that no one can take away from you, because it does not come from man. It comes from the one who called you, who held you, who transformed you in the darkness, so that you can now shine in the world. If you are still in the desert today, do not despair. Know that the day of rising is near. Be faithful in the small steps. Be persistent when prayer seems to echo in the silence. Be steadfast when no one else understands you. Because one day you will come out. One day you will stand on the summit and look back, filled with gratitude. Not because the desert is easy, because in that very difficulty, you have found the treasure the world longs for, an unshakable faith, an unbreakable spirit, a love that never fails. And when you stand there, you will not need to say much. Your presence will tell the story. A story of someone who did not give up, did not deny, did not turn away, even when everything inside him cried out to do so. You will become living proof of a great truth, that when a person has only God left, he has everything.